Good evening. Welcome to Left, Right and Centre. Throughout this evening, we've been tracking the arrival of the Russian President Vladimir Putin to India. It is a very important visit by a very important leader, one of the most important countries as far as India and our foreign policy is concerned. Prime Minister Narendra Modi was at the airport to receive the Russian President. President Putin got into his car, Prime Minister Modi's car, and both went off to his house where there was a dinner which the Prime Minister hosted for the Russian President. The business end of this visit is going to be tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be the day when President Putin and Prime Minister Modi hold the India-Russia summit, the annual summit. There'll also be the India-Russia business summit that's being held parallelly. The Russian president will be given a ceremonial welcome on the forecourt of the Rashtrapati Bhavan at about 9 or shortly after 9 a.m. tomorrow. And then he visits Rajghat as well. And later on in the evening, prior to his departure, he'll be hosted by the President of India at Rashtrapati Bhavan towards the evening, where there'll be a ceremonial banquet before he departs for Russia. So that's what's expected tomorrow. That's the business end of all the developments. Today, in a sense, was all about atmospherics. We've got that wonderful picture on both sides of the screen. One on the left is of what took place in Tianjin a couple of months back, when Prime Minister Modi was in the vehicle of President Putin. But now it's the other way around, with Prime Minister Modi in the vehicle, with President Putin in the vehicle of Prime Minister Modi. So the images on your screen, President Putin arrived in India shortly before 7 p.m. This evening, and then they drove off straight. There was that hug as well. The Prime Minister was waiting for him. Now, you can expect this, or you should assume that this would have been the case, and indeed it was. This is something which the Prime Minister reserves for his closest international partners. Russia is quite clearly one of them. So not only did the Prime Minister greet President Putin at Palam airport, both traveled with each other. It's a gesture that's been reserved for the Russian President and a few other international leaders. Let's take a look at the bonhomie between the two leaders, not just today, but in the past.
Protocols are formal, friendship is personal. Prime Minister Modi surprised Kremlin with a personal touch to President Putin's welcome in Delhi, breaking set protocols. As Putin walked down the aircraft, Prime Minister Modi waited for him at the tarmac with open arms and a beaming smile. And then the much-anticipated hug between the two leaders. A warm bear and tiger tango moment. Prime Minister broke another protocol, and the two leaders travelled in the same car from the airport to the Prime Minister's residence, diving straight into an animated conversation. Then came the money shot, a selfie from inside the car. The two powerhouse leaders beaming and smiling. But travelling in the same car and taking pictures has become sort of a habit for the two friends. Tianjin, just a few months ago, saw the very same moment, Putin giving Modi a ride in his famous Aurus Senat. If Prime Minister broke protocols in Delhi, Putin had waited for 10 minutes for Prime Minister Modi to join him on his ride during the SCO summit. A picture-perfect friendship indeed. NDTV Bureau Report.
Well, what can be expected in this visit? It is an important one. I'm joined in the studio. Roman Volkov is a Russian entrepreneur. He's been living in India for the last couple of years. Ajay Malhotra, former Indian ambassador to Moscow. We've got Dr. Sudhir Mishra, the current and Air Marshal R.G.K. Kapoor. Thank you all very much for being with us. Ambassador Malhotra, let's talk a little bit about trade first, because it's been an unequal trade partnership in the sense that India continues to import much more than Russia does of Indian items, Indian supplies. Of course, Russia is in a war right now, but realistically, by the end of this visit, do you expect that trade imbalance to be addressed substantially?
Vishnu, when you trade, both sides benefit. You agree on a price which the buyer and the seller think is mutually beneficial and advantageous, and then you have a deal, and then trade takes place. So in this case, I wouldn't worry too much about the so-called imbalance, because India benefits from that imbalance. I mean, it would be frankly quite ridiculous if we are trying to remove the imbalance by asking the Russians to curtail oil imports. We are benefiting from that because of the lower price at which we've been buying so far. So, unlike in other cases, I wouldn't say that we need to reduce Russian imports, but perhaps we need to increase Indian exports.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm asking. And that's what needs to be done. We're looking at pharma, we're looking at agriculture, we're looking at automotive components. Is that something that's realistically going to be addressed in this visit, Ambassador?
It will be addressed, but the success rate, I would say, from 5 billion Indian exports, you might get to 7 or 8 billion. But suddenly going up 7 or 10 times, like the Russian exports to us went up because of a purchase of a large quantity of oil, which is very beneficial to us.
Sure.
So in the other direction, I don't see it taking place, except there are a few commodities where we can do well. For example, pharma, fertilizers, importing from there, but pharma from us, some agricultural produce. Shrimp, for example, has great perspective out there. And I'm looking at items where we have, our industry might have suffered due to the sanctions and the tariffs being put by the Americans. So certainly you have textiles and hosiery, you would have food products and seafood in particular, and you would have maybe items like carpets, for example.
Sure.
Or handicrafts that go to USA, which can easily be redirected here and would have a ready market for them.
All right.
But in agricultural products also, there are many out there.
Sure.
Russia needs now, for example, potatoes, pomegranates, and other such items, and we would be happy to provide them.
Yeah. Dr. Mishra,
for example.
Sure. So just give me one moment and let me keep the strike rotating. Dr. Sudhir Mishra, is a DRDO chair emeritus, but he's also India's BrahMos man. Somebody who's had a decisive role in bringing into our country and developing with the Russians a state-of-the-art weapon system that in fact went on to define a part of Op Sindoor. Dr. Mishra, BrahMos stands for Brahmaputra Moskva. It's technology which was originally Russian but then became very Indian. How did that partnership work in the context of two friendly allies working together on state-of-the-art technology?
Good evening, Vishnu. Before I answer your question, I would like to highlight that we are witness to a second most watched, photo op. The first was between Trump and Putin. Putin was common. This is the second one. Now, to answer the question, we did not do any technology transfer in the case of BrahMos. We did the joint development. I can call it as a first FDI in the defense. It was approximately $150 million US, way back, about 27 years back in 1998.
Right.
The second thing is we divided the work proportion to the investment. So 50% of the missile has been developed in India by DRDO and is given to BrahMos. So it's a real joint venture, not technology transfer. What makes it different is that we are very ably supported in the development of BrahMos subsystem by DRDO. So we created a separate project, which was working dedicatedly only for the BrahMos program. And the best of the manpower came from DRDO to BrahMos, and they really added to the technical JV apart from the financial JV.
But Dr. Mishra, what was the Russian technology which came along with the missile, which obviously was at the core of the missile itself? For example, the Seeker was initially Russian, now it's Indian. So how did you progress from Russian to Indian tech?
You see, it's a very long story. Dr. Kalam witnessed one engine being developed in erstwhile Soviet Union. And any vehicle which fly in the air, it is made and designed based on the power available. So both the sides, Dr. Kalam and his counterpart, Dr. Yefremov, he decided that we would design the world fastest, most advanced cruise missile around this engine. So the engine and the seeker means the electronic subsystem which identifies the target. It came from Russia. Yep. And rest of the subsystems like guidance, navigation, the aerostructure, all the softwares, onboard computers, navigation systems, and all the certification processes, they were developed in India.
The structure is Godrej. The structure was built by Godrej, yes, or is built by Godrej, right?
There are many companies like Godrej, L&T, Vem Technologies, Anant Technologies, and there are about 200 companies which are involved in the manufacturing of the subsystems of BrahMos Aerospace.
It's possibly the best and most successful sort of joint development of a weapon system. I'll come back to you in a moment. I just wanted to go across to Roman, who's been waiting very patiently. What are your expectations of this visit?
Yeah, I think this visit is very logical in current circumstances, but business was working 24/7 since past 20 years between Russia and India. Yes, right now we see improvement because, for example, I came from Moscow shifted from Moscow to Delhi to build e-commerce platform in iron and steel. Before that, we were doing this in Russian market. We were the largest one in the trading steel in the e-commerce space. But we shifted to India because we saw huge potential not only in export-import between Russia and India, but also in Indian market itself.
Yeah.
And this is very amazing, like to see how Indian economy is growing.
But Roman, tell me one thing. At the heart of the relationship is the people-to-people relationship. We are all talking about defense and we are talking about trade and oil and sanctions. But being a Russian in India, does it feel like being at home? Maybe not the air pollution, but otherwise.
Yeah, so exactly. I mean, this is one thing which I'm really grateful to India, because here you feel really at home. So people treat you very well. So I think from the first day, and I met thousands of entrepreneurs in India, and I haven't met any kind of wrong kind of relationship. So sure. In terms of relationship, it was very, very like maintaining, very warming.
Yeah.
So this is amazing.
Air Marshal Kapoor, one of the most important weapon systems for India during Op Sindoor was the S-400. That's been a Russian import directly. And even though we don't expect a defense deal, for more Russian S-400 systems now, it certainly seems to be something on the cards. Now, this is important for India because our decision to stick to the S-400, despite American pressure, has 110% worked, right?
Yes, I think S-400 was the game changer. It got its longest surface-to-air kill ever in the world at about 310 kilometers plus. And so there is no doubt that S-400 is a game changer. It's the best air defense system in the world today, just short of what I would say is S-500. But with the current operational philosophy that we have, which is developing of long-range weapons and long-range strike, I think it is important that India gets more of such weapon systems, at least S-400s.
And
in fact, two are yet to come.
Yeah, exactly.
And so those two should be expedited. I think that would be very high on agenda. In addition to probably, I would say to have some more tech transfer for development of Kusha that we are doing, DRDO. I think this is a great opportunity for two nations to look at some deliverables in co-development and co-production, where India gains in terms of technology transfer in terms of building up its own technology base to leapfrog into a world standard that awaits us.
All right, gentlemen, thanks very much for being with us. Ambassador Malhotra, I'll request you to hang on for just a few moments because I wanted to get your views on what we play out next. In 2002, I had the opportunity of interviewing President Putin in the Kremlin. It took place at 2 in the morning. It was a 45-minute interview. And it just strikes me that some of the key themes that we are talking about 23 odd years later, whether it's state-sponsored terrorism from Pakistan, whether it's the proliferation illegally of nuclear technology, of the need for Security Council reform, these are themes. And of course, of Russia's export of its weaponry to China. That's been a factor for us. That remains relevant all these decades later. In a sense, these were important new themes back then. Let's play out that interview and then get a quick couple of reactions. Welcome now to a very special episode of Talking Heads. Joining us for this is the President of Russia, Mr. Vladimir Putin. Mr. Putin, thank you so much for joining us for this very special episode of Talking Heads. We were speaking about a unipolar world and a multipolar world. Do you believe that America's actions against Iraq, at least its stated policy against Iraq, represents a unipolar, hegemonic interest, which is very different from what Russia believes to be the correct course of action?
Мы согласны с нашими американскими партнерами.
We share the position of our US partners in the sense that we must make sure that Iraq is not developing weapons of mass destruction and has no such weapons in its possession.
Несмотря на то, что мир сильно изменился,
and although the world has changed, the tools, the international instruments that we used before to improve international relations can continue to be used and should be used and adapted to the present day situation, and they can be further improved. And here what I have in mind is first and foremost such instruments, such tools as the United Nations.
но мы при этом считаем, что ни в коем случае нельзя забывать.
But at the same time, we do believe that we should not forget about other hotbeds existing in the world that should pose a certain threat. And one of such concerns, other concerns that we have, is the weapons of mass destruction in Pakistan. We have to have a clear picture of where those weapons are, in what status, in what condition they are, and what will happen to them in the future.
Есть и другие регионы мира.
And there are also some other regions of the world that we are concerned about, no less than about Iraq.
So do you believe that Osama bin Laden is alive in Pakistan? And would you label Pakistan a state sponsor of terrorism?
Мы дружим с Индией не против кого-то.
We are friends with India, or we maintain our friendship with India not against somebody, but precisely for the purpose of being friends with the country and further continuing our friendly relationship.
Но негативное влияние в прежние годы.
But the negative influence that Pakistan used to exercise in neighboring Afghanistan in previous years, including support of Taliban, are well-known facts.
Ясно, и мы это хорошо знаем, что Усама бен Ладен не просто
And it is quite obvious, and we are fully aware of the fact that Osama bin Laden not just actively cooperated with Taliban, but he was part of the whole system.
President Putin, in the past, you have spoken of a strategic relationship between India, China, and Russia. What really do you mean by this strategic relationship?
Китай наш сосед, Индия.
China is our neighbor, and India is one of our major international partners and a country relations with which are of utmost importance to us. And we think that we should try to develop our bilateral relations with each of these countries, because Each relationship is of paramount importance for the Russian Federation.
Наша позиция заключается в том, что
And our position is as follows. We are convinced in the need for positive development of relations between Russia and India, Russia and China and India. And I think that all the parties concerned are interested in that development, all the parties within this triangle.
вместе с тем я не думаю, что мы должны забегать вперед.
At the same time, I think that we shouldn't get ahead of time or move ahead without proper preparation. We should move ahead step by step in a staged way, trying to develop harmonious relations, preparing all the necessary conditions. But of course, our overall aspiration should be to develop our relations in as positive a way as possible.
Why then, sir, if each relationship is of paramount importance to Russia, does Russia provide China with weaponry similar to what it provides India, for example, Sukhoi 30 fighters, Kilo-class submarines, advanced destroyers, when Russia is aware that India and China have a long-running border dispute?
Россия активный участник рынка вооружений.
Russia is an active player in international weapons market, and we are among the leaders in the world in that area, but we are not the first. We are not in the first position in arms sales. There are some countries that sell much more weapons to great amounts than Russia.
Это, собственно говоря, рынок высоких технологий. Здесь
This is
достаточно жесткая
a market of high technology goods, and therefore it is a highly competitive market.
У нас с Китаем тоже
With China, we also share a very long border,
Как вы знаете, были
and we too have had our border disputes between China and the Soviet Union then. At the same time, we are gradually resolving those problems.
Еще одно очень важное обстоятельство.
And there is yet another very important point.
Я сказал, что на рынках вооружений идет достаточно
As I
напряженная
said, very tough competition is going on in international weapons markets.
Вместе с тем, Россия не поставляет
And at the same time, Russia is not delivering weapons to conflict areas. And this is our rule.
И мы стараемся придерживаться этих правил.
And we try to abide by these rules.
Между Индией и Китаем, слава богу,
There
нет
is
никаких
no
конфликтов.
conflict now between India and China, and I hope there will be no conflict in the future.
И чем больше мы будем
And
работать
the
в
more
направлении
we
укрепления
keep
отношений, в
developing
том треугольнике,
relations
которого вы
within
сами
the
сказали,
triangle to
Россия,
which you
Индия,
have
Китай,
referred,
тем
the
быстрее мы
more
добьемся этого
successful
позитивного
we'll be in achieving that positive result.
Mr. Malhotra, it's interesting, a lot of the points that he mentioned over there, other than Osama bin Laden, who's not a factor personally, remain the same. India continues to face the threat of terrorism. Nuclear proliferation is an issue all over the world. The fact that Russia transferred those Sukhoi 30s to China has meant that China has developed them into the J-15 and J-16 jets, which bedrock the Chinese Air Force. But through it all, their support, Russia's support for India as far as terrorism is concerned, has been clear and consistent. How important is that?
I think it's very important because it's good to know that you have a friend out there with whom you have no difference in understanding on the issue of terrorism that comes across the border into India. The Russians fully appreciate that. Putin has never been to Pakistan, for example. And they do realize, and there is a memory out there, you know, when he spoke of Afghanistan, and thank you for sharing that wonderful interview which you took of him, a very nice interview, I should say. But there's also a memory out there because they remember those 10 years when they had to fight in Afghanistan. And who was the opponent? It wasn't only Osama bin Laden, it was the Taliban, trained, brought up, and, you know, armed and abetted in every sense by Pakistan. So even in the Russian armed forces, there is that memory that these are persons who caused us a lot of trouble, led to many deaths in Russia, which is a very serious matter as far as they are concerned. So, yeah, as to China and its role, Russia has good relations, certainly with China. They used to call it no limits. But even if you look at no limits, there are limits. There is no relationship which has no limits. So it's in a manner of speaking no limits, because no matter how close two countries may be, there are always limits.
Sure.
China, for example, if you look at the Chinese situation, you will find that the difference in alignments between Russia and China. For example, China regards Crimea still as a part of Ukraine and has no interest in backing Russia in its dispute with NATO.
Yeah.
Similarly, Russia doesn't recognize Chinese claims in the South China Sea or want to get embroiled in China's territorial disputes. So the point here is that neither of them would like to get drawn into a major conflict as a result of backstopping the national interests of the other.
No, absolutely.
So there are limitations to this friendship.
Yeah. No, I take that point. Ambassador, I need to take a short break. Thank you so much, sir, for being on this program, sharing your thoughts. We're going to take a short break.